So I sort of look at weight as a symptom, it's a sign that something is changing in your body, because a lot of people have it backwards, right? They're like, if I lose weight, X, Y, and Z will happen. I will feel better, I'll sleep better, my blood pressure will go down, whatever. Really, it's that if you can reduce inflammation, if you can help balance hormones, you will lose weight. Well, simultaneously, you will help those other things, but it's not necessarily because of the weight.
Hey there, I'm Amy Connell. Welcome to Graced Health, the podcast for women who want simple and grace-filled ways to take care of themselves and enjoy a little chocolate in the process. I'm a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach who wants you to know your eating, movement, and body don't have to be perfect. You just need to be able to do what you're called to do. One thing I have heard recently over and over and over from my community is the hormone struggle is real. It's real. You know this. I know you know this. What's also real is everywhere we turn, there seems to be different guidance coming at us. Listen to one podcast, it'll say one thing. Read another book, it'll say something else. It's overwhelming on top of an already overwhelming situation. I mean, how can we be expected to make all of these decisions and figure things out when we are tired because we're not sleeping and our internal temperature is going up and it's going down and we have brain fog and all the things? I know you know what I'm talking about. That's why I'm pleased to introduce you to Dr. Beth Cook. Dr. Beth provides individualized assessments and guidance in her clinic to help women whose bodies just don't feel right, whether it's from menopause-related symptoms or even other issues. She certainly does not focus solely on menopause, but that is where we focus our discussion today. In today's episode, she also shares several supplements and herbs that help many of her patients, as well as general guidelines to deal with those issues. And I know you know what I'm talking about. But of course, we also talk a lot about how that individualization and customization of a treatment program is so important. Dr. Beth Cook graduated from Texas A&M University in College Station, Texas, with her Bachelor's of Science in Biomedical Science with a minor in dance. Then she went on to Parker College of Chiropractic in Dallas, Texas, to earn her Doctorate of Chiropractic and Bachelor's of Science in Health and Wellness. She's been in clinical practice for 12 years and has been using the Wellness Way approach for 6. And if you're not familiar with Wellness Way, we do get into that a little bit later in the episode. She has a huge passion for helping women discover hormone health and how to help handle them. She has a holistic approach to dealing with their hormones and their bodies naturally. So I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. Before we bring on Dr. Beth, I'd like to remind you of my new online on-demand class called Be Complete. Be Complete is an acronym for all the things that we kind of need to be doing as we're getting older, but we don't always take the time to do. It's all wrapped up in one class because I wanted to make it simple for you. These moves in Be Complete help you strengthen your core, balance your hip musculatures to help support those cranky knees. And I also focus on the mind-body aspect of our movement. Also, if this episode or another one you've listened to is valuable, could you do something valuable to me and share it with one friend who you feel would benefit from this information? Word of mouth is by far the best way to spread the love in podcasting, and I'm always so grateful when you do that, when you share with your friends on socials, and I just am so grateful for your help. Okay, let's bring on Dr. Beth. Dr. Beth, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. Well, first of all, I need to know a little bit more about this biomedical science and dance. Those are two totally different things, and I love it.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that. My brain was always very science oriented and math oriented. And I wanted to go to A&M originally because I wanted to be a vet. And so that was the track they told you to go. I discovered the hard way that I cannot tolerate like surgeries or blood or any of that stuff. So that school was out for me. I grew up dancing. I loved to dance. And honestly, my freshman year at A&M was tough. And I just randomly decided to take a ballet class as an elective. It was like life, breathed back into me. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to take all my electives and I'm going to do all dance. I just ended up getting a minor in it. So actually now the A&M dance program has grown a ton and you can major in it now. And they've done amazing things with that program, but yeah, I don't know.
That's awesome. No, so I grew up dancing as well. And everybody, like with regard to fitness and moving their body, everybody kind of has their own little story. But for me, I just feel most in my element when I'm moving. And I think a lot of it is from that dance background and hours and hours. I did competitive dance, but competitive dance in the 80s and early 90s is very different than competitive dance is now.
Yeah. A&M was interesting for me too, because growing up, I did jazz and tap and, lyrical and all those things. But at A&M, I discovered modern dance and loved it, and improv and just a lot of stuff that I didn't know and understand about dance. That was an awesome experience. That was an amazing part of my time at A&M.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I did tap and jazz too. And if you could give me a pair of tap shoes, I would definitely go into the shuffle ball change.
I was going to say, my daughter has a recital this Saturday and the teacher sent me her dance and, I'm like watching it, just reliving all of my tap dances growing up.
Yes. Oh, it's so fun. I love that. Okay. But now you are like still focused on the body, but just in a bit of a different way. You're a chiropractor by training, and you are also a wellness way practitioner. You help women restore their health. So first, tell us a bit about the Wellness Way program. And then I want to get into a couple questions specifically about some of the issues that women are having when they come see you.
The Wellness Way is a group of clinics. There's lots of us. The corporate clinic is in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So Dr. Patrick Flynn founded the Wellness Way. I don't know how many years ago, maybe 20 years ago. And so he started an affiliate program in like 2015, maybe. And so I became a Wellness Way affiliate around 2016. So we all use the Wellness Way approach. Most of us are chiropractors. There are some nurse practitioners and nutritionists and things like that, and that are part of the Wellness Way. But we use an approach that's founded on what we call the 3 T's: trauma, toxins, and thoughts. So those 3 T's are what we sort of look at, evaluate, and assess our patients with to determine why are they inflamed, why are they having health issues, why are they having hormonal issues. And we use that approach to sort of restore the health of the person. We don't use protocols. We use chiropractic as a tool. We use testing as a tool. We use herbs and supplementation and diet and movement and lifestyle change. So we sort of incorporate all of that into our approach.
Okay. I'm sitting here doing the math, and if this was founded 20 years ago, that was like leading edge technology of taking the neuroscience of the trauma. I'm thinking specifically and how that really does affect our bodies and how that our body stores that. I mean, that all the claps to your founder for putting all of that together, because I think for so long it's like our body and then it's our trauma, and like it's all been compartmentalized. Mm-hmm. And now we're realizing, and I'm learning how integrated it all is. So I love that. Okay. Now talk to me some about what typical, or I shouldn't say typical, but what kind of issues you are seeing in a clinical practice, and particularly with women. My community is a lot of women 40s and 50s, and what they are dealing with when they come in and see you. But I know that that's not your only clientele.
Yeah, so I see a lot of women. Part of it is just what I market to out there to the world, and it's because I love really teaching women about their hormones. I think that there is A lot of misconceptions. A lot of people think that there's not that many options when it comes to their hormones, and how do we restore and fix and correct, and do I replace them, or do I just struggle? And so that's why I really see a lot of women with hormonal issues. A lot of women come to me because if they're in that menopausal phase, they're having a heck of a time transitioning. They're having, insomnia and weight gain and hot flashes, and they're mad all the time. They have fatigue, brain fog. Those are a lot of the issues that I think women come in to see me. I would say weight is probably a big one. I struggle with that a little bit because I think about weight in a different way. Those are probably the most common reasons that people come to see me. And then women also tend to say things like, I just don't feel like myself. I just don't feel like myself anymore. I can't really pinpoint it. It's like all these little things that I've noticed. And I think it's my hormones, or I think it's this or that. And that's where I come in. Cause when you go to your PCP or your OBGYN, they're not really trained to correct those things. Their job is to manage your condition or disease. And so they end up frustrated and coming to me because they heard about me from someone, or they heard about the Wellness Way. So
I have to say, as I was prepping for this interview, I'm on a group text with a handful of friends who are all in this age range that we're talking about. And I said, hey, I'm prepping for this interview, women's hormones, perimenopause, menopause, what are your issues? And I think every single thing that you mentioned, I mean, it was just like, bam, 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 bam. I felt so bad for anyone who did not have that on like mute, like the do not disturb group text. Cause I mean, just my phone was blowing up because all of these, and I keep hearing all of these. And I have to say, I'm 47. I'm definitely seeing some of them, not all of them. And the weight thing, it's funny that you talk about the weight thing as you struggle with, because I'm struggling with this as well. I mean, just in full transparency, because I have noticed I don't really weigh that much, but I noticed that shorts that fit last year don't fit right now. Mm. And I haven't done anything different. And I know I'm in that age, and I'm sitting here going, this is really bothering me because my body's changing. But I'm sitting here on every single podcast episode saying,
yeah.
Basically it doesn't, like you don't have to, it doesn't have to be perfect, whatever that is. And so I'm in this real internal struggle right now of like trying to figure out how I even feel about this. So I'm with you, and I'm also complaining at the same time, I think is what I'm saying. So I guess I would give you, before I get into the question, I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, how do you normally work with women who are coming in saying that kind of stuff?
Weight is tricky because, I mean, from what you do that there are so many contributing factors to weight. Everybody is different. We all are so different. This is why the Wellness Way is big on testing. But if you are in a phase in your life where, your hormones are transitioning a little bit, then that does become a factor. It affects your leptin sensitivity, which affects how we break down fat. It affects your cortisol levels, and it affects your insulin. Your estradiol is starting to shift to estrone, and estradiol is sort of what gives us our curves, right? And estrone is going to give you more of that like abdominal fat deposition. So some of it is that stage of life that you're in, but some of it, there are underlying things that are just different about you now, right? It's not the exact same as it was 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So some of it's just adapting to those changes and maybe doing some testing and seeing where you're at now compared to where you used to be. And then just making those tweaks so that you can support, your insulin better, or your leptin better, or, looking at your hormone balance. How are your adrenals functioning? Do you still have your uterus and ovaries? There are a lot of factors that can contribute to weight and why it's, suddenly this stubborn thing that wasn't an issue before. So I sort of look at weight as a symptom. It's a sign that something is changing in your body. And instead of, because a lot of people have it backwards, right? They're like, if I lose weight, X, Y, and Z will happen. I will feel better. I'll sleep better. My blood pressure will go down, whatever. But really it's that if you can reduce inflammation, if you can help balance hormones, you will lose weight. Well, simultaneously, you will help those other things, but it's not necessarily because of the weight. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. And it's somewhat freeing as well, because of course, I think for a lot of people, it's like, well, what am I doing wrong? Where did I go wrong? What have I changed? And really putting a lot of it on us when I mean, like you say, it's more of a symptom of hormones and all of that. Now, with regard to hormones and managing that, I mean, do you have any like best practices I mean, I love that you have a personalized approach. And so I want to honor that with the same question of like, do you have some best practices? Do you have some like, this in general will help 80% of women who are suffering from this, or I recommend let's start here and see how that works for you. Anything that people can kind of pull out of their pocket in their tool belt and try.
The first thing I always work with a patient on is inflammation. So checking for those inflammatory triggers, what does their stress level look like? How stress resilient or not stress resilient they are, looking at how much that's affecting their life at that time. How much toxicity and deficiencies do they have? Where are they lacking there? And how is that impacting things? And then also their nervous system. So looking at how their nervous system is functioning, doing x-rays and things like that. So that's the first thing that we work on. Of course, that's where testing comes in. But there are things in general. Number one is sleep for sure. Women that are having trouble falling asleep, having trouble staying asleep, not feeling rested when they wake up in the morning, that's going to have a big impact on your cortisol levels, your insulin levels, your leptin levels. And when your body is in a state of stress, it doesn't care how skinny you are. It's in survival mode, right? It is prioritizing what your body needs, and weight loss and, breaking down fat is not a priority for it at that time. Same thing with sex drive. I see a lot of women with low sex drive, and I have to kind of frame it for them like, your body does not care about that right now. It cares about other things, So sleep is a big one. Making sure that you are having good sleep health, breaking those bad habits that you have, looking at your phone late at night and staying up way too late, eating way too late. Having a little something before bed isn't going to kill you, but, sleep is a big one, making sure that, you're getting enough sleep and it's restful. So that goes hand in hand with adrenals. Adrenal health is huge when you are in that perimenopausal, menopausal phase. Your ovaries are your primary producers of hormone. So when you're cycling, that's where most of your hormone is coming from. But when you transition to menopause, some of that hormone is going to shift to be coming from your adrenal glands. So taking care of your adrenals is huge. So sleep, stress management, making sure you're eating, meat. For all the people out there that don't want to eat meat, go get some liver glandular, make sure you're getting plenty of proteins and vitamin C.
Get some, what was that you just said?
Some like liver glandulars. Well, I guess
I've never heard of that. Tell me about it.
So it's just liver in a capsule, basically. So beef liver is very dense in, all your amino acids and B vitamins and iron and magnesium and potassium. Essentially, you could use liver like a multivitamin almost. In fact, I usually tell people get rid of your multi and do some liver. So taking care of your adrenals either with sleep and stress or supplementation, like ashwagandha is a great adaptogenic herb that can help your adrenal glands function better. Astragalus is a great herb that helps support your immune system and your adrenals and your red blood cells and your white blood cells. And that's really important when it comes to overall health, but, also that transition and menopause. There's a lot of herbs that you can utilize, but those are some big things that I usually have to walk my patients through for sure.
And is that something where you guide people in, for lack of a better word, dosage? Because I'm sitting here going like, how do you know how much to take? I mean,
Yeah, we at the Wellness Way we manufacture herbs, so we have liquid tinctures, and so it's hard for me to compare in like milligrams. But I always start my patients at half a teaspoon twice a day, and then they either go up or down. If they're like, I feel a little better, but I'm not feeling the impact I thought I would. Okay, maybe you need more. So liquids make it a little easier to change your dose.
sure. And those
But
are the drops that go under the tongue.
not necessarily. Ours aren't drops that go under the tongue, but keeping them in your mouth for a little bit, yes. Yeah.
When you talk about the toxicity with regard to inflammation, where are some areas that we should be looking at that might be contributing to toxicity and we don't even know about it?
Oh man, toxins are everywhere, right?
Yeah.
That's a huge category. I mean, your water is one good place to start, making sure that you are filtering your water. We get a lot of toxins through our water. I think women are probably more susceptible because we use so many products, so making sure all the products that you're using are more plant-based, and your cleaners and your toothpaste and your shampoo and deodorant, all that great stuff, right? Also, plastics are a huge one. Just switching out all your Tupperware, get your Tupperware cabinet and kind of get rid of all the plastic stuff. I use mason jars, super easy, cheap. And so that's a big one. Also, eating organic. I know eating organic isn't perfect. There's still some exposure we get when you eat organic, but eating organic or eating local, so that you can reduce the amount of like pesticides and, just the junk you're getting on regular produce. So I don't know. Those are big ones. There's probably a lot more. There's so many more. But yeah, toxicity and deficiency is a huge thing. In the Wellness Way, Dr. Patrick Flynn always says, he would rather be sufficient and toxic than deficient and non-toxic. We're all going to be exposed to toxins. There's nothing we can do about that. We can reduce our exposure. Definitely, we can work on that. But if you are sufficient in supporting your liver and kidneys and your skin and your lungs and all the places we need to support to detoxify properly, then, you can eliminate all that junk a little bit easier.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good to know. Thank you for that. So this is one thing, it seems like if you start digging and utilizing, either Dr. Google or going to Amazon and looking at books. I mean, there are a million different things out there in managing our hormones, and particularly, in this age group. So why is it so hard to get like just really clear guidance?
Yeah, it is tough. There are so many people out there. I think one is because, like I mentioned earlier, there is traditional medicine and your OBGYN, and they are trained in a very particular way. We need medicine. It's important. It's necessary in a lot of circumstances. But when we're talking about hormone balance and, healing and body restoration, that is definitely not their wheelhouse. But that's usually your first stop, right? As you go to your OBGYN, you ask them what to do. And they're like, well, just take some progesterone or just take some estrogen, or here's the testosterone pellet, or here's some testosterone cream or whatever, I think that's one problem, is because that is not, in my opinion, not the first thing that you should try. The second is that the world of, holistic natural healing is just so big and vast and broad. There are so many different modalities and techniques and supplements, and there's just so much. And then also it's the approach that you are looking for, right? I mean, some people use protocols where you have to just seed cycle, and if you seed cycle, everything will work better, right? Or
what do you mean by seed cycle?
Some women will use protocols with seed cycling so that they can help support the different phases of their cycle. So don't ask me about which seeds you use when, because I don't know. I don't know. But
I'm just not even familiar with the term.
yeah, that's just an example of like one of the things that you would find out there if you were trying to find, how do I heal my hormones naturally? Seed cycling is a big one out there that a lot of natural practitioners use, is seed cycling. So you utilize different seeds that have different, compounds and constituents, different times of your cycle to support the phases of your cycle. Now, if you're menopausal, that's different, right? There are no longer phases of your cycle. You're no longer ovulating, so you don't have to necessarily worry about that. But so I think that's one reason. Another reason why there's so many different approaches out there. I love what you said in a podcast is that you have to use discernment, right? You have to kind of learn and then figure out like, this really feels like what I need to try. And I resonate with this and I get it, I understand it. And so I want to try it. So yeah, the wellness way is just more personalized. It is, we have to test to see where you're at, to see what you need to do. There's so many different ways to support your hormones. There's so many reasons why they are off track. Our hormones are a secondary system. They will respond to their environment. So if you're super stressed, you have a lot of inflammation, you're not sleeping, you're feeding your body junk, you're not moving, there's going to be some interference there with your hormonal health. So
well, I love that individualized approach, because I'm sitting here as you're talking, I'm thinking this makes so much sense, because nobody eats the exact same way I do. Nobody eats the same way I do, right? Or the, different types of food, whatever it is. I have my own unique stressors because some things stress me out, whereas they don't stress my husband out, or vice versa, or my friends or something like that. We all have different, movement and fitness levels. We have different sleep schedules. I mean, all of that kind of stuff. And so I love how the wellness way and what you do, Dr. Beth, is that you take all of the information for an individual person and then provide individual guidance on that off of what will help us, not what will help your best friend. Like I think I even talked about this in my book, like just because a certain plan or program worked for your friend doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And I think that that's important too with our health. And maybe to answer my own question from earlier, that's why there's no one clear cut plan. Like it's different because we're all so different.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I can have 10 women come in here. They all have very similar symptoms and they all have different, recommendations because they all have different triggers. They all have different stressors. They all eat differently. All the things you just mentioned. Our physiology is just so individual and unique that, you can't use a just one size fits all approach. I love reading books and I love learning about different techniques and approaches people use. And so I kind of just take from different ones, but it is difficult and frustrating when you read a book and you try and you do everything that they recommend and then you don't have any change, right? Like you don't lose any weight or your sleep doesn't change or anything like that. I'm sure there are a lot of things that can benefit you and kind of lead to healthier habits and to you maybe feeling better. But if you want real resolution, then you kind of have to get down to the nitty gritty of what's happening with your body.
Okay, so I know you do focus on these individual care plans. I would love for you to walk us through what that looks like. If someone is sitting here listening going, man, this sounds like exactly what I need, what would either a consult or appointment or a program or whatever you want, I don't even know what you call it, but what would that look like in working with you?
Sure. So initially I'll do a new patient consult with the patient. And I see patients virtually. I see patients in office and we just sit down and we have a conversation about what are you struggling with? What are you concerned with? What have you done before? Where have you been? What have you had tested or tried? What types of doctors have you worked with? And we just kind of figure out, where do we think a lot of your triggers are coming from? And then decide what type of testing do we need to do. If you're in office with me, chiropractic care is always a recommendation that I'm going to give you. So we will get you adjusted and start that process while we're waiting for tests to come back. And then you come back, we sit down, we talk about your test, what you have going on. I lay out a plan for you and say, this is how you should be eating. These are the herbs that you should be taking, or, different lifestyle modifications that are mostly specific to you. There are some general guidelines that I'm going to give patients, but and then we go from there, and then we just meet and we make sure, like, are things changing? Do we need to test anything different? I take every patient through a detox. And then we usually do some retesting after that to make sure, yes, symptoms are improving, but let's check your blood work too. Has that made any change at all? So in general, big picture, that's what it looks like when I work with a patient. I am not a nutrition coach. I'm not I don't call and check in with you every week. It is, here are your tools, be consistent, and I'm here to guide you through the process.
Okay. So this is it's a multi-point check-in. Then it sounds like it's not one and done, or you make an appointment. So how many appointments does that look like in general? I have to imagine it's different for everyone.
Yeah. In general, I would say the average I see at first, it's a little bit more intense. So somewhere between like 4 and 6 appointments, depending on what you have going on. If you have a lot of stuff going on symptom wise, health wise, lab wise, then I'm going to see you a little bit more often. I would say it's around once a month ish. That changes for everybody. Usually once we get you through detox and you're more stable, then our appointments are a little bit further out. My goal is to get you to where you see me once a year, and we do your labs, we check in. I say, great, you're doing awesome. Keep doing what you're doing. If anything new has popped up, do we need to address that? So my goal is always to get you to where you can now stand on the side of prevention. I see people that come in, to my office because they want to be on the side of prevention, but most people are coming to see me because I'm their last resort. They've tried everything. Nothing has worked, and they're having to dig themselves out of a big hole. So my goal is to kind of get you to where you want to be and help you maintain that. How do we keep you there?
If someone is wanting to connect with you, wanting to learn more, wanting to make an appointment, so you do virtual. We don't ever have to be able to be in person, right?
Correct.
And then you just do labs at a local Quest Diagnostics or wherever you.
Yes. Yeah. It depends on where you are. But yeah, I do a lot of different types of testing, blood work. If you've ever heard of the Dutch test is a urine hormone test, stool testing, neurotransmitters, food allergies, heavy metals, you name it. I probably can test it. Mold. I see a lot of patients with mold toxicity. So mold is a big one too. But yeah, there's a lot of different tests that we can do. So if you're virtual, then I just ship you what you need. And then we do everything over the phone.
If they want to learn more, how can they connect with you?
The easiest way to connect with me is probably on Instagram, at Dr. Beth Cook.
Okay.
You can send an email to my clinic, spring@thewellnessway.com. Those are probably the 2 easiest ways to get a hold of me.
You. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Okay. So I have a couple more questions that so this one I ask all my guests. I am fascinated by tattoos, or I really like learning about them, which is super random. I don't have any, but what I found is when people choose to put body art on themselves for the rest of their lives, they normally, unless it's like a drunken night in college, they normally have a meaningful story behind it. So I was wondering if you had any that you would be willing to share. And if not, if you had to get one, what would it be and where would it go?
Okay. So I do have a tattoo.
Okay.
There is no meaningful story behind it.
Okay.
I have like a butterfly on my toe. I think it was like my college rebellion. Like my mom always told me, you better never get your tongue pierced or get a tattoo. Like in the early 2000s, tongue piercing was like really hot. Like everybody was doing it.
Yes.
And so I was like, ugh, I'm not getting my tongue pierced, but I might get a tattoo. And my roommate went and got one. And I was like, I'm going to do it. And so I did it. And yeah, not a meaningful story. My college rebellion reminder, that's what it is. But if I had to get another one, I totally would get another one, but it would probably be like initials of my children or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
almost got another one before my husband deployed to Afghanistan. But I chickened out. So we
Oh
didn't
my
do that.
goodness. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. That's a whole additional conversation because that's a lot of support. So just formally thank him for your
Yeah.
service,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
his service and for you for supporting that.
He's not in the Army anymore, but
Okay.
he did serve for 8 years. So yeah.
Wow. That's intense. That's intense. Well, I'm sure, I don't even understand it all, but I do know that that's a huge sacrifice on everybody's part.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And
Yeah.
I think there's no problem with a with a rebellious butterfly tattoo.
It's a great question.
Yeah. Well, it's always kind of interesting to hear people's, what they would only do. I finally figured out where I would put it, but I don't know. I still don't know what I would get. Okay. And now this season, I am doing something different. Instead of me pulling out the one simple thing that I want people to remember, I am inviting you to do that. So big or small, large idea, small idea, one little nugget. What is the one simple thing you want people to remember from this conversation?
I always tell women that you have to listen to that little intuition inside of you, because many women that I see, they have seen their doctor and have been told, you're fine, your labs look great. I don't know why you're feeling this way. So just pay attention to that little voice, because it means something. You know your body better than anybody else. And if you don't feel right in the way you want to feel, then I think that's valid. I think a lot of women feel ignored and they feel like they're not listened to and that their doctors aren't listening to them. And so just know that there are people out there like myself that will listen, and that little voice is very, very, very important. After I had my fourth baby, I just thought I was like tired and, brain foggy. But if it wasn't for the wellness way, I would have ignored it. And I would have said, it's just that I'm tired. And when I did testing, it was like, whoa, this is not good, So just listen to that little voice. It's important, it's meaningful, and it's probably trying to tell you something. So
great advice. Really, really great advice. I love that. Well, Dr. Beth, thank you for coming on today to the Grace Health Podcast. This has been a really interesting conversation. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah. Okay. That is all for today. So go out there and have a great day.